Yeah. Thank you, Chinmay. So we have our next speaker, Dr. Venkat Chandar, and he has been working. So he's a very interesting name. His company's name is getmoneyplan.ai. I think he can explain it better, but it's very interesting story. When I was talking to Venkat, that what does it even mean? But Venkat has a background with gaming, and he has worked with gaming studios. And his current organization, current company, actually help game studios use and leverage AI and help game developers. This is a pretty interesting talk. Venkat gave me a sneak peek about it while I was having a one-on-one with him, and he was kind enough to actually spare some time and talk about a use case that he's solving at his customers. So yeah, I'll let actually Venkat take it up from here. Thank you.
All right, cool. We good? All right, morning, folks. Thank you all for being here, and special shout out to these folks for giving me the invite. My name is Venkat. By the way, I tend to switch between languages, thoda, so I'm hoping everybody's comfortable with Marathi, Hindi, thoda mix mein. I tend to talk quite a lot, and I tend to ramble. My name's Venkat, as Chinmay and team have already introduced me. My career has been making games. Um, I want to. When I started making this, I thought about, hey, tech crowd. Do we want to really get into deep tech? Do you want to? What do you really want to talk about, right? But then my industry is not necessarily known for tech innovation. We are more of tech consumers, right? So I figured, hey, this will be more of a how are not just us at Money Plant, but in general in the gaming industry, how are people using AI? And by the way, when people in my industry talk about AI, they mean everything from machine learning se leke LLM se leke सब कुछ everything under the sun. If it is something to do with tech, it's called AI these days, right? I will actually show you folks one of my earlier decks, which I used to show people a couple of years ago. What was considered AI, right? Anyway, further ado, just going forward. All right, so who we are, quick intro. All right, yeah, it is changing. All right. So I started this company a couple of years ago. This is my fourth startup. I've done startups in nanotech, gaming, done some in banking, fintech, just random things. Whatever has caught my interest at that time, उसमें कुछ ना कुछ तो किया है. I started this one 2 years ago. We do really three things. We make games. We work in Web3, so not the rug pull wala. वो वहाँ पे काम नहीं करते. More of the financial aspects of things, and obviously now AI. So we've done a few things. We brought a few guys on chain, things like that. All right, next. So this is really, I think, how a lot of people, when it comes to gaming, think about AI. Even now, quite a bit, right? AI NPCs. You chuck in an LLM, chat GPT डाल दिया गेम में, अभी आपका गेम का पूरा स्टोरी वही लिख देगा, right? And everybody is getting these phenomenal experiences, movie-like experiences. Dialogues are fantastic, right? AI art everywhere. Gemini game बना के दे देगा. I will show you something a little later that one of my devs actually did produce from Gemini. So credit where credit is due. But that's another big problem that we constantly see, where it's AI art is in abundance, and that's always a problem. Next is this is unfortunately we don't have TikTok anymore here, but this is a real problem, where if anybody has seen ads for games, it's always that same hook of, "Arey, you're one move away from winning this level, one bad move, and arey yaar kya gadhe log jaise ki," right? So this has now gone into overdrive, especially with a lot of AI, especially video gen, since has been involved. And lastly, I think this is the most contentious of the lot, where people want to replace designers. Now, gaming as a field, right? Like it's, I'd best describe it as tale of two halves. It's one of those few industries where you will find a lot of people who come heavily from data, right? पैसा बनाना है. Games are an entertainment form. Entertainment क्यों है? ठीक है, लोगों को मजा आता है. But end of the day, we are trying to make money, right? So we are a heavily data dependent industry, right? All things told. But it's also a phenomenally creative industry. So you are always at odds. This has been one of, it's a classical problem. Uh, I'll give you a good example of how my, sort of meetings with my designers and my tech team would usually go, right? Uh, so anybody from product will be like, यार ये देखो, here is our newest funnel. ये नया feature release किया. Here is our funnel. This is where we are seeing drop-offs. And then there'll be a designer who will start with, हे सगळं बरोबर आहे, पण मला असं वाटतं. Right? And that, anybody who's worked in product knows that, bhai, tu aisa mat baat kar yaar. Like, immediately you'll have this standoff. Mala aisa vatta ki, right? So this is where, qualitative stuff meets quantitative, right? And now we're coming over here, where it's like, okay, is this something that is now going to change? Are we going away from qualitative, more towards quant? Anyway, so when 21, 22, when LLMs really started taking off and AI became a buzzword more than anything else, there was a lot of hype, right? Promises the ye ban jayega, but nothing, right? Like we've not. This is our production reality, right? What it actually does for us in the industry today is it's mostly about bottleneck removals, right? Like this is where almost anybody who is using AI of any form in gaming is using it for. They're sure beyond the vibe coding and beyond the lovely 15-second video ads. This is what people are doing, right? We're making data, like I said, has always been a severe problem for us in gaming. There are a lot of people who just don't understand it. Making it easy for others to access, making it easy for them to understand why something is working the way it is. That's, I think, one of our biggest use cases. Obviously, automation of repetitive stuff, things like support tickets, right? While they've already existed, bots have always existed, a little more taste towards them. That's it. And I think feedback loops. This is probably where everybody is now automatically doing it, even if they're not really realizing it. For example, people will, and I would very strongly recommend don't do this, but people will throw up all of their financial data on ChatGPT and say, "Mujhe model karke dikhao," right? But yeah, so what we like to focus on, right, is what are human beings doing? What should remain the job of a human, and what should AI really be assisting in, right? More of tools rather than replacements. These are what we think. By we, I mean this is our ethos at Money Plant, right? Where we're thinking about, hey, what are the typical challenges, right, of most studios when our target customers are small studios like 40-50 people to mid-sized studios 200-250 people. Many of these are always bandwidth hungry. एक एनालिस्ट रहेगा 30 लोग उसको क्वेश्चन पूछेंगे, अरे मुझे, and every question has to be answered yesterday. Like you were saying, it's the same thing, right? It's not. It's a very global phenomenon. Everybody's question is a burning question, and it needs to be answered yesterday, right? Next is, we are again a very content-heavy industry, which means you need. It's like how Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi. There'll be like 300 episodes, but that's entertainment, right? Like that is just how the entertainment industry works. It's eyeballs, it's engagement. You need to have constant new things going on. Otherwise, you will lose users, right? Somebody else is going to grab those eyeballs. So that becomes the second biggest challenge, live ops bandwidth. So you've got a ton of content to bring out, right? And it's usually, again, वो 19-20 change करो, इसका ये blue का pink करो, वो इधर का 4 का 5 कर दो and ship it. But that used to take time, things that you can automate. Next, this one is more from a Web3 use case, but economy blind spots. When you're doing anything to do with finances, right, and gamified finances especially, this becomes a serious problem. When you end up making financial decisions which not just impact your company, your firm, your team, but your overall economy, when it's a shared economy, it actually does have real world constraints and arguments, that becomes a problem. And lastly, I think scaling support, I think this is something which everybody already is using. And my Amazon, for example, customer service has gone to hell. I can't talk to a real person, even if it is something as simple as, sir, mera laptop kahan hai? One of my laptops that I've ordered has been in limbo for the past 3.5 weeks because I'm talking to a bot. Okay? All right. So those are our use cases. This is how we look at it. Right? We don't start everything with AI. Don't say replace everything with AI. Start with what you can actually do. Right? What is your end result? Measure that. Right? Measurable outputs is what you really want to start thinking about from day zero. Anything that's repetitive, anything where there is ambiguity, where there is guesswork involved, right? We've seen agents being able to do a lot of this stuff, right? And I will start with one of our first use cases. So Joy, this is our data copilot. I'm sure everybody has already heard of this. The difference is we started this like 3.5 years ago. And this is a very standard problem in any game studio. You've got PMs who will not have analyst bandwidth, but they'll have questions. Here's a new feature that went out. Here are 10 questions that I need answered because I need to be able to make decisions. Right? Very standard everyday problem. But because analyst bandwidth looks something like this, analyst के पास कुछ भी काम नहीं है, because daily reports भेज रहा है, वो कुछ तो 7 फेरे reports. So there are people who come up with stuff like this, right? And then new feature goes out, bandwidth shoots up, right? Like he's screwed. He's got no way. He knows अगले 3 हफ्ते मैं घर नहीं जा रहा हूँ, मैं इधर ही बैठा हूँ, right? So this becomes a problem. So what ends up happening is non-tech folk will end up eating into other people's time and say, hey, अरे यार मुझे एक query मेरे को सिर्फ एक जवाब चाहिए, 5 मिनट देना, right? So that ends up taking not just time, but it also kills your momentum, right? Everybody who ships in production knows that the worst time to be in production is the day right after production. You're going to have problems. You need your engineering bandwidth focused on that. But instead, we end up doing this a lot. So why not just have an AI do this? Simple, very simple thing. Take English, convert it to SQL, and that's pretty much it, right? Start off as a very, very simple use case. Seemed very easy. And this was our first demo. This is circa 20, I want to say sometime around, okay, yeah, this is all synthetic data. You can see all numbers, 24, 25. You'll see all of that. And this was the very first real use case that we built. This started off 2 years ago, and we shipped this in production. This is what some of our customer teams use today. What does this do? It does literally what I just said. It does just one thing, but it does it well. Impact is measurable for us. When somebody asks a question, they can actually get an answer then, right? Nobody's waiting on analyst bandwidth. Nobody's waiting for a data interpretation. You're getting the answers then, right? And because of that, what all of our customers at least have found is now that data is a commodity and it's not a precious resource, right? It's actually being consumed more, right? This is what is helping reduce the mujhe lagta hai wala jo, right? That is the one parameter which we measure. How low can we bring that incidence rate, right? We don't want people to be making decisions or starting discussions that start with an opinion. You need to start with some modicum of fact, right? For example, you can say, hey, only 30% of my users even started this game. All right, that's a problem. But at least you're not guessing what that percentage is. You're not saying, nahi, मैं तो 5 लोग से बात किया यार, उनका तो game चल रहा है. This is normal. This is very, very normal. Where you've got these inherent biases of your own circle. अरे उनके phone में तो अच्छा चल रहा है. मेरे device पे तो problem नहीं है. I'm sure you guys have all heard this, right? मैंने तो test कर लिया, चल रहा है, right? But real world is very different, right? So that's what a lot of impact that we're seeing, at least on this one tool. I don't want to spend, by the way, I know I'm going a little quickly here. The idea is I'd rather talk about the breadth than depth. I don't want to get into too deep of every single agent we built. We built a lot over the years. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about this agent. Right? Why? It's because this was what the very first one was. So it was literally just, this was when OpenAI just opened out its APIs and said public can now use it. Public developers use kar sakte hain, right? This was when the GPT store didn't exist. Anybody remember that moment when Sam Altman आया stage पे आया बोला by the way now अभी GPT store है, and then I heard like all of those PDF converter का website shut down instantly. मतलब सब लोगों ने उनका GoDaddy पे गए और बंद कर दो, domain बंद कर दो. Why? Because he killed an industry, right? So this was roughly that time where it was literally just an API and we had a bunch of Python scripts that would execute the actual response. Worked well enough. Then we went to pre-MCP. So ChatGPT, OpenAI came out, GPT stores came out, Bard launched. If anybody remembers Bard launched, died. All of that happened. Claude was the thing, but MCPs weren't. So we were building agents within agents because hey, for example, a classifier agent. यार ये question भी है क्या? मतलब obviously we had zero guardrails initially, right? So people would ask stuff like, "How is the weather?" And it would try to generate weather-related SQL when there is no reason for it to, right? So we started building guardrails slowly, steadily. I think that, and as our system prompt improved, we got better, right? So we were able to differentiate between what was rambling, just bantering, to actual questions about data. There were people who would, try to find out information that they shouldn't. For example, somebody from marketing trying to find out what engineering is doing. For example, secrets किसी ने डाल दिया है क्या? Right. Then generator agent validation. I think this is something that Chinmay has already sort of covered, so I won't go too deep. But this is what it looked like, and now this is what we have today. So what you guys saw in that video a few minutes ago, that's based on this. So why am I really showing you this? You guys probably already built exactly like this. So why am I showing you this? Saying it's gone through these three major changes. When I say major changes, basically it is go to GitHub, archive your repo, start again, right? It's gone through it thrice in less than 2 years. Reason not being that it was a bad idea to start with, nor was it a bad use case, which is what most nascent products start off like that. You try something, it fails. Right? Here it is, the technology is advancing at breakneck speed, right? What is absolute truth today is completely just useless tomorrow. I won't even call it deprecated. Because I don't know of anybody who's not using MCP. Does anybody here know anybody who is shipping something in production that is not built on MCP? Yeah, exactly. That's my point, right? And how old is MCP? 2 months. Right. So where are we really headed? That's the kind of question that we are always trying to answer as an industry, and not just in game development, but also overall in AI. I'm assuming that that's what a lot of you are sort of trying to cover. I want to talk, before I start with our next agent, I'll stop for a couple of minutes. Any questions up until this point? All right. So, all right. Love. Sorry. All right. I don't know if that is a word. That was wordplay, but thank you. So either this is either ये सबके सर के ऊपर से जा रहा है या तो सबको मजा आ रहा है. So I whichever way it is, I'll take it well. All right. So this is our second. This one's far closer to me and my heart, because I'm more of a पैसे वाला. I like talking about money. I like making money, but I like talking about money more than I like making money. So the idea is this, right? When you're talking about economies, and Chinmay talked about this quite in depth, right? Synthetic data, when it comes to economies. Can anybody guess what's, for any games which you might have consumed, any entertainment, can anybody guess what the pay rate is, what the conversion rate is? Like for every 100 people who watch something or play a game, how many people actually spend their money on top of that? 5%? 10%? Yeah, you guys are approximately 500 to 1000% above global standards. Our standard is, if you are at a 0.5% conversion on a game, if anybody spends even $5 on a game you made, you have a potential for success. The best games in the world have a conversion rate of about 7%. Right? These are your multi-billion-dollar companies, right? The guys who are making your Supercells, your Clash of Clans, those guys, they've got 5+% conversion. which is that's not a gold standard. That's an outlier. So nobody is thinking about that. So this becomes a serious problem when you're trying to do modeling of any kind, right? Because out of 100 guys, you're going to have one guy maybe pay you. So synthetic data becomes a serious problem for us, right? This is something that nobody has solved yet because we don't know how to solve it. As an industry, we haven't found a way to solve this consistently yet. That's not because there is not enough mathematical modeling available or pricing data or economic data, none of that. It's simply because entertainment is a very private purchase for a lot of people, right? It's discretionary, yes, but then we could look at discretionary spending models and see how that works, right? We could look at PPP data, we could look at GDP data, we could look at all kinds of data points and try to figure out, will these kind of people spend, which is a lot of how we make money, is we do targeted advertising towards people who we think will pay us money in the future, right? But hey, this becomes something that is actually worth solving. What if you're able to consistently predict who is going to pay, right? So this is what pricey. This is still very much a work in progress for us. We've been building this agent for the past year and some. But essentially, our first use case is Web3 because it's more economy driven. It is, the primary goal for everybody in Web3 is the financial aspect. It is the money making. It could be in any which way or form. It could be, I'm hitting the right trades, or day trader kind of mindset. It could be a collector mindset. Could be any kind of thing. But the idea here is this: we are able to, because of how we are building this, essentially, Pricey is a collection of smaller agents, all of whom behave differently, right? So you've got some sub-agents who will panic sellers, right? Others are what we call hodlers. Hodlers are khareed ke rakh liya hai, they'll never sell no matter what. If anybody has read there was this guy who used to work in McDonald's, he bought a crypto token, it went to 2 million and he didn't sell it. And then it lost all value, but he still didn't sell it. So those people are called hodlers. They are eternal optimists. So what we're able to do with these agents is simulate entire economies. What will purchase patterns look like? When new content comes out, how many people do you think will subscribe to it? How many people do you think will hold off? How many will sell off something? Because these are all very key events inside of a game simulated economy, right? Where especially when you allow for people to be able to transact with one another and not just with the system, this then becomes a real thing. So financial modeling, but for games, is the best way I can talk about this. So this is, I think, where we really got into the concept of guardrails. Joy did need guardrails because, well, it's data, end of the day, but replica set pe kaam kar rahe, and it's all internal tooling. That's fine. This actually affects everybody else. This affects your user base. It does not just affect you as a studio, it affects your user base. You make one bad judgment call, you could completely screw up your core economy. And then fir kya karna hai? There are no take backsies in a lot of these things. Once you make a mistake, you're done. So this is, I think, human in the middle, where we don't do complete agentic anything, which is where it started from. We still prefer, and we still very strongly advocate for humans not just being the ideators and the designers, but every key decision a human needs to be making. So the way I think about this is, everybody is thinking, talking agentic this and that, right? But in a production workflow, if I was to say, we've got on the one side, you've got agentic, right? Like completely autonomous agents making decisions, etc. And then on the other side, you've got your classical workflows, right? Just series of actions, Zapier, N8N now is a big thing, right? The way we are seeing and we are using heavily is far closer to workflow modeling than it is to complete agentic. This is something they, now this could be just us. It could be the people, again, the 5 people we are around. We've still not understood how to use agentic very well. I'll be honest, right? I'm sure there are far smarter people who do know how to use it well, but we can't. Call it fear, call it lack of understanding, call it what have you. For us, without a human, there is no go ahead. So everything is gated. But what does that end up looking like? It looks like somebody opens their inbox and they're flooded with like 30 emails from a bot in the morning saying yes or no. Right? It could be simple yes or no decisions, but you still need somebody to look at it. So because end of the day, if I tank a game's economy, I can't exactly tell my customer ChatGPT ka galti hai. Right? Has to be somebody. Yeah, this is a very early view of what, again, very dev viewy stuff, right? But this is what Pricey actually does simulate, where we're talking about economies at scale. The numbers you see on the right, where it goes, 4,000 to 20,000, these are all indices. The game's index about how we are thinking about it. On ramp, off ramp volumes. The next thing that you see, I don't know why it's saying 1472 there. That's something I just noticed. But once again, these are meant to be potential. This is not real data. It's not synthetic data. It is modeled data, right? And hey, what happens? You can now run a bunch of simulations. Now, this is something that we currently, like I said, work primarily in Web3, but we see use cases in complete free-to-play games, and especially the iGaming industry. So iGaming is, especially anybody is interested in that, is super interested not just in these kind of modelings and not just in simulations, but also in player modeling, right? Your degen gambler, your Monte Carlo better, your all of these. That is something that, once again, that we see as one of our potential customer bases. That's something that we have been building towards. But once again, where does AI really come in? It's not in the modeling. It's not in the simulation. Sorry, no, it is in the modeling, but it's not in the simulation, right? Nothing's going to stop you or change. You can't replace a 10,000 runs with 2 runs just because you got AI involved. That's not going to happen. It's still going to run it 10,000 times. However, key decision points where you would do things like, where it was just a flow chart earlier. If your balance goes below this, then cash out, right? Simple example. Now, when you've got multiple kinds of agents coming in, playing, and then making those sort of smaller micro decisions by themselves, you got a far more realistic view of what it is, which is what you sort of see in that second graph. That's what I'm trying to say. If this was a purely deterministic sort of pattern which you'd used, where it was like just imagine a bunch of if-elses, then the graphs wouldn't look anything like this. There'd be more plateaus, you would see drops, you would see spikes, you would see hockey stick curves, you would see all kinds of other curves, not this kind of complete chaos. Right. Continuing on with Pricey, I think these are things that, once again, going into the whole idea of what are we really careful about. And if anybody hasn't understood yet, I tend to talk more about what to avoid than what to do, because this is what has actually cost us. When you're building and you're constantly shipping, it's harder to talk about your mistakes and self-reflect and improve from that. It's very easy to just say, "Ye dekho, maine ye banaya," right? Yeah. So true finances. This is the same thing that Chinmay was talking about. PII. We are also super careful. We never want anybody's fingerprint, digital or physical or otherwise, ever showing up, because our systems tie into KYC, it ties into AML, it ties into PII, it ties into a whole bunch of other systems. So when we're talking about synthetic data, we have to make it true enough, but not true, right? Aspas, but not. So we have this internal joke कि our financial modeling is like GPS. 50 meter के अंदर के है, बस. That's good enough. Design decisions. This is what I just said. What I've been talking about is human first design. If a human can't understand it, code aside, right? Code let an AI write. It's good enough. But if a human can't understand the design patterns behind it, you're probably doing something wrong. Anything that's critical, human review. absolutely human review. Do not say Claude ne karke de diya. Just don't go there. Secret truths, I think these are something. By the way, who has committed their environment to prod? Like, show of hands. Don't worry, I will not. मैं आपके companies में बोलूँगा नहीं, but who has committed their environment variables to prod?
I mean, we deal with this. We do this.
So you're like, don't do this, right? But this still happens, right? It still happens, and it happens ridiculously often, right? But how do you avoid things like this? That's why human first. Right? Everything is that. All right, switching gears. Yeah, good.
You said design decisions are there. So does that mean that you only make decisions, but the design is there?
No. That means that design decisions are not necessarily visual design, right? It could be system design, it could be interaction design, any kind of design. We're saying it's got to be made by a human. It can be, you can get help from an AI, right? Or you can validate it using an LLM, for example, right? You could say, hey, here is a homepage I designed on Figma or something. Give it to ChatGPT or Claude and say, iska usability test karke dikhao mujhe, right? Like, is this colorblind friendly, right? Is it accessibility friendly, right? These are places where you can get a tool to help you, right? But you still got to be thinking that end of the day, see, it's not your customer is another human, right? Your customer, the person paying you is a human. It's not another system. If it was, we'd probably be talking very differently, right? We'd be having John Connor vibes. But yeah, all right. Thanks. Sorry. Yeah. So this is something that, once again, I'm talking about it, and I wish a lot more people talked about this, because this is what could have helped us tremendously when we were starting off, right? When you're starting, it's like you throw something at a system, it spits something out. Wow, magic. अरे पर चला कैसा? मतलब वो एक decision पे आया कैसा? Because that became a problem, right? Because you want, you're 80% of the way there, right? And you want maybe a couple of changes. You have absolutely no idea how it got there though, right? Completely deterministic systems, this is an easy problem to avoid. You know every step of the way, यहाँ पे ये variable change कर दो, इसका ये variance यहाँ पे है, ये change करो, you're done. Right? This became much harder to do when you're talking about especially system prompts, right? You start off with what looks like a killer system prompt, अरे बहुत सही है यार, and then I need to make this change, and then okay, 2 variations later, you're nowhere close to what you started with. Why? And then you're like, you're right? So this is something which we used to struggle with pre-thinking models, but now it's a lot easier, right? But we used to do a lot of rigging around before thinking models became something that was accessible to everybody. We would essentially have micro steps, output that to a log, read in the log, do all of those kind of things. So it became a complete transcript generation. So what would essentially start with like a one-liner, tell me how many users I had yesterday, and it ending up as a SQL statement, we'd have like 7 intermediary steps. Like, अच्छा schema लेके आ, schema में से तुझे क्या समझ में आया है? Output your understanding of the schema, right? Like, are you interpreting this correctly? Have you considered things like locale, right? DDMMYY, those kind of things, right? So every small microstep is like basically having a very expensive intern, at that point. Next was prompt versioning. So that led to the prompt versioning, where we'd make a beautiful system prompt. It would do 80% of the job, 90% of the job, and then it'll break. So having something, even those small changes along the way that you make, sometimes they cause these huge differences. Right? And this, I think, everybody has felt this over time. I heard somebody asking a question about repetition. The data keeps getting repeated over and over. Yeah, that's probably because of your prompt. Not saying you're a bad prompt writer. I'm saying it's just how an LLM understands your prompt, especially a system prompt, is vastly different from how you think it is understanding it, right? And lastly, audits. Like, this is something that everybody should be doing regardless. And like I said, if you, as long as you're able to look at every decision you're making, anything that may or may not affect you, and you have a way of going back in time, you're usually golden. Costs. Any business owner's headache. I've paid way too much to basically everybody. I started taking up odd jobs to pay Claude's bills because can't help it. Is you have these things happen. Um, so this is more again like I said, business owner perspective. But think about all of these things. Almost everybody I meet, especially from an pure engineering perspective, right? A lot of them think that, hey, if I'm not using an Opus or if I'm not using 5.3 codecs, I'm doing it wrong. No, it's not true. Right? Most of the times you can get away with cheaper models, right? If you as an institution or as a company are thinking about this, you build your own wrapper around it. It's easy enough, right? Do that. Next, caching. Anybody, if you're doing any kind of production work, any kind of monotonous repetitive work, daily reports, monthly reports, ये कर रहे हैं वो कर रहे हैं, वही 5 क्वेश्चन आएंगे दिन का, कैच करो. ये पता है, ये हर दिन आने ही वाला है, might as well do it. Third, limits. Heavily limit your users, right? This I can't stress enough. Most people, even business users, right? Even when you're talking about B2B sales, you're talking about enterprise customers. I have invariably had customers who have asked, "यार तू कैसा है आज?" to an LLM. I like, मुझे इसके लिए पैसा नहीं देना यार. Come on, right? So limit your users. Claude is a good example of that. I personally hate the rate limits that they impose, but the philosophy is right. It's about finding the balance. It's about questions per 5 hours or whatever they're doing now. But have those things, instill discipline in your users. कि use this as a tool, not as तेरा दोस्त. ये तेरे साथ चाय सुट्टा पीने के लिए नहीं है. ये तेरे लिए काम करता है. Please have the discipline, right? That's something. And lastly, rate limits. Nothing. Everybody wants data yesterday. Everybody wants answers yesterday. Nothing is an emergency. अगर फटा नहीं है, if your servers are not on fire, save your money, right? Batch stuff, right? Like this is a straight up 50% cut on your bill. Like actual numbers. Almost every provider out there will give you a 50% discount if you batch and you do it off hours. Absolutely instill this. If you're in an engineering team, if you're an engineering manager, get your engineers to do stuff like this, right? You're going to save yourself a ton of money. Mistakes, I think these I did cover, but reiterating, especially the last one. We drank the Kool-Aid. This was 22, 23. We started like everybody else. कि अरे अभी तो AI के साथ तो सब कुछ change हो जाएगा. And I will take this to show you folks what we were just switching to a different one. This is what we used to sell initially. Like this was early 23. So anybody from a mathematical background will say that this has nothing to do with AI. There's absolutely zero to do with AI, right? It's literally just a machine learning model. But you could sell it as AI. You could sell AI powered offers. These are all our early customers. People who were buying AI powered offers. They weren't AI powered. LLMs were not capable of this. This was a machine learning model, right? But this is what drinking the Kool-Aid looked like 2 years ago, where everybody was talking about AI hai, so then everything is going to mind-blowingly change. Switching back, right. Just about done. I think we're another 1 minute maybe. Talk about this, and yeah, I am running short on time. All right, so final thoughts. This is something that didn't make sense to put anywhere else. So here, sort of personal outlooks on a lot of things, and I've talked about some of these. Workflow over agentic. It's again something which I think it's a hot take, but I believe is entirely true. But last one especially, critical mass. We're still nowhere close to where this is going to end up, right? Nobody predicted MCPs. Nobody predicted how quickly LLMs would take over. Nobody predicted how search would change or how Stack Overflow would. Nobody has predicted any of this. we're still at least 3 years out. 3 years from now, when we all meet up once again for Mitramandal episode 50 or what have you at that point, we'll have a very different conversation. I'd like everybody to actually spend 5 minutes of the time today, go home and think about what that is like, right? That is what you want to build for. Could be wild, could be something completely out of the ordinary, but it is something that you should be thinking about today. Right? That is it. Thank you everybody for listening and being such a great audience.
Can take a couple
Couple questions, if you don't mind. Yep, Chandar.
You talked about the cost a lot here,
Yeah,
right? The price scale. So in that world, in your Web3 world token,
yeah.
how your AI agentic tokens are getting calculated? Like how you predict your cost? Because now, as a business owner, it's like running a restaurant full house,
Correct.
still making losses.
Yes.
So have you like worked on the cost point of view? Like what is the cost per token and how it is translating into your outcomes and results?
Well, yes. Yeah, I'd like to say yes and no. So yes, because that's traditional financial modeling, which you do anyway. Where pricing really comes in is not in the, while it can do the modeling for you, that's not what it's good at or what it's built for. I'd like to say it's built more for being able to simulate a bunch of participants in that economy, right? Where you've got those early snipers. You want to model it around. You've got a couple of leaks out there, right? And you've got a couple, those few people who are going to snipe the token as soon as it launches, right? फिर क्या होगा, right? We are now building in things like social hooks, right? Looking at, for example, a founder's TG profile, their X profile, their Discord handles. How is that social stimuli going to affect the token's price? Right? These are, again, business questions that people have for us. So we're just trying to find ways of trying to answer them because there's just no system for it.
That's what has it predictability, unit pricing, everything was predictable.
Yes.
Now in this, when I move to agentic or AI world, it's completely like not you can say it's like a percentile basis.
Correct.
One power user
Can change your entire economy.
economics.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right, but that's traditional economy guardrails again, right? Like have your circuit breakers, have things like that. Don't allow people to be able to abuse your system too much. Those things aside, again, human design first. Right. Those things aside, it's more of how can you get answers quickly. That's basically it.
You talked about using agentic here. I'm sorry. The agentic AI that you talked about without human in the middle is what you're talking about.
No. So what?
No, so let me rephrase my question.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you actually that agentic AI should not be used without human in the middle, and that not even understanding the gaming part, but coming from the enterprise world. And that is where I was coming from. That even there we are thinking that the agentic AI will be used and so on, but there has to be a human
Correct.
as a validator of it.
Correct.
So that was the thought that. Now we are talking about not humans but experts, correct? I mean, we are not talking about humans who are prompting for getting some
Yes.
answers and so on. We're
Yes.
talking about experts
Yes.
who know the system very well, and that's
Absolutely.
why they are able to validate that.
Correct.
So I'm assuming that you are using that expertise or capturing that expertise when they are answering those 30 questions, yes or no, to validate. Because what you talked about, what's going to happen in 3 years, is going to happen because of that
Correct.
expertise that is built into the system.
Yes.
So I'm assuming
That's our value capture.
Correct.
That is
So
how we
you
are
are doing
capturing.
that, exactly.
Yes, that is our value capture.
So it's very interesting that whatever I was thinking about enterprise actually in the gaming
That's, I
world,
think,
it's exactly.
you're absolutely right because that's our moat. I mean, if you think about it, right, what is any business who's operating in AI? What's your moat? It's not data,
Correct.
right? Because everybody is,
Expertise.
it's your expertise, right? Your SM, your domain depth is the most important thing. That's the only valuable asset you have. If you can't capture it, 3 years down the line, you're a nobody.
Yes, exactly.
You talked about batches for reducing the costs.
Correct.
Can you like share some idea on how like you do something different to match it and that reducing cost?
So if it's something that's not time sensitive, right? Batch your calls, right? Batch your questions because there is a very high likelihood that 5 people have asked you the same question, right? Now, for example, I've got let's say that I've got 3 different PMs, who are working on the same product, right? They're all going to be asking me similar questions, right? So why should I now get these answers individually, especially when it's not this thing, not something that's time constrained, right? So obviously we pass on the benefits to our customers and say that, hey, if you let us do things off hours, and just tell them that raat ke time mein kar lo, we'll reduce your bill. Like we'll basically your credits are doubled, right? So then we are not just saving, because on downtime it's cheaper to run these. It's also that I can now look at the similarity between multiple questions and see if I can just answer them once. So basically, if the same question is asked 3 different ways, you need one query. That's one call versus 3 calls which would have given the same result. That's what I mean by correct. Correct.
Has nothing to do with
Yeah,
predicting it before sending it to them.
no.
Just identifying.
Yes.
what are the similar
Correct. Do you have time for one more?
Okay.
Otherwise, I can take it on the side.
We can actually take it offline.
Alright.
Maybe just keep a time check. Let's take a 5 minute break and let's do it at 11:45 right now. 11:50. We can start. Yeah. All right.